The biting wind howled and the cold rain lashed. For the medieval peasant, hands raw and muscles screaming, every swing of the axe, every shovelful of mud was a desperate gamble against the coming winter. This wasn't just building, it was a brutal, defiant struggle, shaping earth and timber into the only hope they had against an unforgiving world. His very survival depended on the walls rising, on the roof sealing out the wet and the bitter cold. But what if everything you thought you knew about these humble abodes was a comfortable myth designed to sugarcoat a terrifying reality? What grim, unwritten secrets did these mud and stick walls truly hold? What was the true cost, in sweat, pain, and lives, of simply putting a roof over one's head in medieval England? Forget glossy brochures filled with idyllic imagery, the calculated precision of modern property values, or the subjective appeal of picturesque, scenic views. For medieval peasants, the very act of selecting a home site wasn't merely a casual decision. It was the most critical, existential, life-or-death gamble of their entire precarious existence. A single wrong move in location, choosing a spot prone to flooding, exposed to the cruelest winds, or too far from a reliable water source, could spell inevitable slow starvation, agonizing fatal exposure to the relentless elements, or the brutal fate of freezing to death for their entire family. A harsh, omnipresent reality, known all too well in a time before any semblance of modern conveniences or safety nets. These were people utterly devoid of written maps detailing topography or water tables, lacking any intricate weather reports from distant meteorologists, and certainly possessing no sophisticated geological surveys to guide their choices. Their only compass was the accumulated, often brutally earned wisdom of countless generations, etched not on parchment, but into the very fabric of their communities and passed down meticulously by word of mouth, through direct demonstration, and through the unforgiving lessons of nature itself. Choosing the precise location for one's family's only shelter brought with it the chilling certainty that a solitary misjudgment could literally condemn everyone you hold dear to a slow, agonizing, brutal end, sealing their fate within the unforgiving, beautiful, and dangerous landscape. But how did these uneducated and largely illiterate people, reliant solely on their instincts honed by centuries and their inherited lore, consistently manage to choose spots that not only provided essential, life-sustaining resources like fresh water in defensible positions, but also effectively defied the brutal English elements for centuries, standing the test of time where others perished? It wasn't simple blind luck, nor was it a mere series of fortunate coincidences that saw their homes endure. It was an ingrained, intuitive mastery of their harsh local landscape, an intimate, visceral understanding of every subtle dip in the land that might offer crucial shelter from prevailing winds, every strategic rise that could provide natural drainage and prevent damp, and the most reliable, cleanest water source, whether it be a bubbling spring, a meandering stream, or a shallow, accessible well. This incredibly deep, practical, and experientially honed knowledge served as their vital, unwritten blueprint for survival, meticulously forged through immense hardship, countless failures, and the harrowing, unforgiving lessons of past mistakes, ultimately ensuring their desperate gamble paid off, generation after generation. This profound, intimate connection to the land meant they saw not just trees and water, but read subtle signs, recognized dire warnings, and understood unspoken promises embedded within the natural world itself, transforming their selection process into a sophisticated, vital art of survival, where the landscape itself was the ultimate unyielding guide. Could your modern home, built with all its technological advantages, even survive such rigorous, intuitive scrutiny by ancient standards? If you want to know the answer to this challenging question, watch this video to the end. The very skeleton, the core structural integrity, the foundational framework of almost every English peasant home was painstakingly built from colossal timbers, often massive, naturally curved crux, split meticulously down their length from single ancient trees. These gargantuan wooden arches, imposing in their raw, untamed form, sometimes span the entire width of the modest house, from ground to ridge. bearing the immense crushing weight of the entire roof directly to the ground, and thus ingeniously circumventing the need for complex, deep, and time-consuming wall foundations. This design was not just practical, it was a profound acknowledgement of the available resources, the constraints of the environment, and the formidable skills at hand passed down through generations. The sheer, unimaginable, back-breaking labor involved in this monumental undertaking must be fully grasped. Felling a giant oak, perhaps several centuries old, with nothing but crude hand axes and primitive saws, a Herculean task that would consume days, even weeks of relentless, exhausting effort for a team of men. Following this, these massive timbers would be painstakingly dragged for miles over uneven, often muddy, treacherous terrain, their immense weight crushing the ground beneath. Only then could the builders begin to precisely shape and interlock these colossal timbers using not a single metal fastener whatsoever. How, against all modern intuition, did these seemingly unsophisticated builders achieve such incredible structural strength, unwavering precision, and enduring stability in their structures without the benefit of a single iron nail, screw, bolt, or any form of modern power tool for cutting and shaping? Their profound secret lay in remarkably sophisticated, handcrafted mortise and tenon joints. These intricate interlocking cuts, a male projection, the tenon, precisely fitted into a corresponding female recess, the mortise, were then secured not with metal, but with simple, tightly hammered wooden pegs, often cut from seasoned oak or ash. These meticulously crafted connections formed joints of astonishing integrity and durability, capable of withstanding centuries of compression, shear forces, and the constant stress of wind, rain, and snow. It was a testament to forgotten craftsmanship, generations of meticulously shared knowledge passed down from master builder to apprentice, and an intuitive, deeply ingrained understanding of wood mechanics and joinery that allowed their humble homes to stand firmly and resiliently for centuries, defiantly defying both the harsh odds of nature and the relentless test of time. Their structures were more akin to complex organic puzzles, where each custom-fitted piece contributed perfectly to the whole, relying on exact fit, inherent material properties, and skilled precision rather than external reinforcement. Could modern carpentry, despite all its advanced tools and materials, truly achieve such timeless, unyielding endurance with so little? Or have we sacrificed durability for speed and convenience? If you want to know the answer to this intriguing question, watch this video to the end. Once the sturdy, massive timber frame was meticulously erected, standing with its cruck arches reaching skyward like a skeletal promise of shelter against the ceaseless assault of the elements, the crucial, monumental next step involved the incredibly tactile, immensely physical, and profoundly laborious process of crafting the protective, enclosing walls. This vital construction was most often achieved through the iconic, yet to modern sensibilities, seemingly improbable and almost fantastical technique of wattle-and-daub. This ancient time-honored process began not in a factory, but directly from the land itself. It commenced by meticulously gathering and then weaving a strong, flexible lattice of thin, supple branches, known as the wattle, typically harvested with painstaking care from readily available local hazel or willow trees, highly prized for their inherent pliability, natural resilience, and fast growth. These carefully selected branches were then interwoven with remarkable dexterity, basket-like, between vertical timber stakes that were securely fixed to the main frame of the house. This tightly woven screen, forming the very backbone and inner membrane of the future wall, provided the essential armature. Upon this intricate framework, a thick, sticky, and frankly pungent mixture known as daub was then liberally slathered, often applied directly by bare hand, in layers, and with immense, sustained physical effort, pressing the material firmly into every crevice of the wattle. This concoction, a true marvel of medieval resourcefulness and local ingenuity, was not some haphazard mud pie. It was a carefully proportioned blend. It was typically composed of abundant local clay or readily accessible subsoil, thoroughly mixed with water to achieve the perfect consistency, combined with copious amounts of straw, absolutely crucial for providing vital tensile strength acting almost like a natural rebar network and preventing the daub from cracking disastrously as it dried. And remarkably, a significant proportion of animal dung, primarily from cows or horses, was incorporated. The dung, far from being just a dirty addition, played a surprisingly powerful, multifaceted role. It acted as a potent natural binder, dramatically enhanced the mixture's workability and adhesion to the wattle, and contained a complex network of natural fibers that further strengthened the integrity of the completed wall, making it incredibly durable once dried. The earthy, organic aroma of the drying daub would have filled the air for weeks. Can you truly envision the monumental, incredibly messy, and undeniably odorous task of undertaking the construction of your family's primary shelter out of what essentially amounts to glorified mud and straw, all the while living with the constant, gnawing fear that England's notoriously relentless, driving rain could theoretically turn your hard-won walls back into amorphous, featureless sludge overnight, literally washing away your efforts and leaving you utterly exposed and vulnerable to the unforgiving elements? This wasn't a hypothetical fear. It was a daily reality for many. How, then, did these seemingly fragile earthen walls, built without cement or modern waterproofing, manage to avoid dissolving into a muddy mess in constant dampness, especially when their ingenious builders had absolutely no access to modern waterproof paints, advanced chemical sealants, or any form of synthetic stabilizers? The truly ingenious answer was a sophisticated combination of incredibly practical design principles and inherent, deeply understood natural properties, honed over centuries. Generously projecting thatched roofs acted as crucial, wide umbrellas, creating substantial overhangs that extended far beyond the wall lines, effectively shielding the vulnerable lower wall sections from the worst of the direct rainfall, diverting water safely away from the daub. Moreover, homes frequently sat upon slightly raised stone plinths or robust, compacted earth foundations, a vital architectural detail that prevented capillary action and effectively stopped insidious rising damp from the saturated soil below from wicking up into the earthen walls and compromising their base. Crucially, the daub mixture itself, when properly prepared with the correct proportions of clay, straw, water, and dung, and allowed to dry slowly over time in a controlled manner, was surprisingly breathable and remarkably self-regulating. This natural porosity allowed absorbed moisture to naturally evaporate outwards, preventing water from being trapped within the wall's core and causing decay, thereby enabling the walls to dry efficiently and endure through countless wet seasons and the slow, inexorable passage of centuries. This deep, almost intuitive understanding of natural materials and their unique characteristics, far from being primitive or accidental, was a sophisticated, intuitive engineering marvel, a testament to generations of learned wisdom, passed down not through textbooks, but through sweat and shared experience. Given its organic composition and incredible longevity, could modern, technologically advanced materials truly replicate this organic resilience, this ability to breathe and self-regulate? Or have we, in our quest for synthetic perfection and instant results, lost something vital about sustainable construction? If you want to know the surprising answer to this profound question, watch this video to the end. The roof was not merely a component of the house, it was quite literally everything to a medieval peasant. Their primary, vital, and utterly indispensable shield from the endless, chilling rain that defined the English climate, the biting, gale-force winds that swept relentlessly across the open landscape, and the insidious, bone-numbing grip of winter that could bring death by exposure. For the vast majority of the population, this essential overhead protection was a thick, expertly laid thatch, a true marvel of natural engineering that incredibly often became a living ecosystem in itself, teeming with a surprising variety of insects like spiders and beetles, providing secure shelter for various bird species, nesting safely in its protective layers, and occasionally even hosting small mammals like mice or even stoats. This organic vibrancy, a constant hum of life within the roof, contributed intimately to the home's deep connection to its surrounding natural environment. But here's the terrifying underlying truth that permeated their daily lives. A constant, unspoken dread lurking just above their heads. Your entire home was constructed largely from highly combustible straw or reeds, an inherently flammable material, with an open fire burning continuously in the very center of the living space, just feet below their sleeping family. Imagine the anxiety, the vigilance required every single day. How then, in the face of such a terrifying paradox of living literally under a blanket of tinder, did medieval peasants manage to avoid their homes erupting into catastrophic, life-consuming infernos on a regular, devastating basis, wiping out entire families in a horrifying flash of smoke and flame? It wasn't merely blind luck, random chance, or some kind of divine intervention. Their open hearths were almost always strategically placed directly in the very center of the main, single room, allowing smoke to rise directly upwards and vent through a simple smoke hole in the roof's apex, or simply permeate the porous thatch itself, preventing dangerous flammable soot buildup within enclosed flues, which were virtually non-existent in peasant homes. Furthermore, and crucially, the tightly packed layers of thatch, when properly maintained and densely packed by a highly skilled craftsman, actually contain surprisingly little oxygen within their dense matrix, making them remarkably resistant to catching fire from a casual, errant spark. While a direct, sustained flame, perhaps from a poorly tended fire or a lightning strike, would certainly ignite it with devastating speed, this created a precarious yet profoundly ingenious balance that often defied disaster, though it must be acknowledged that when fires did occur, fueled by the very structure itself, they were swift, brutal, and devastatingly complete, leaving nothing but ashes. Given this constant inherent risk, could your modern home truly survive such a persistent fire hazard without the benefit of a single smoke detector or automatic fire alarm system? If you want to know the answer to this question, watch this video to the end. In the literal and figurative center of every medieval peasant home glowed the open hearth, a rudimentary fire pit, often just a shallow depression scooped into the beaten earthen floor, or sometimes simply delineated by a few rough stones marking its perimeter. This single, omnipresent fire was truly the pulsating heart of their existence, the very core around which all domestic life revolved. It provided the only reliable source of heat for the entire dwelling, pushing back the chilling damp and cold. It cooked every single meal, from simple, long-simmering stews and thick pottage to occasionally baking flatbreads on the embers. And it cast the sole source of flickering, dancing light after sunset, heroically pushing back the encroaching, terrifying darkness of the medieval night. It was the undisputed nexus of family life, warmth, and sustenance. But truly immerse yourself in this reality, existing day in and day out, season after season, year after year, for an entire lifetime, in a perpetual haze of pungent wood smoke, with no vertical chimney or enclosed flue to draw it efficiently away. A reality where every timber beam supporting the roof, every woven basket, every piece of clothing, and every meager possession was perpetually coated in thick, black soot, and where your lungs constantly ached and eyes stung from the acrid, heavy air that filled every corner of your home. Given these seemingly harsh, almost unbearable, and frankly unhealthy conditions by modern standards, what possible hidden, unexpected benefits could this primitive open hearth system have inadvertently offered medieval families beyond just the obvious provision of warmth and illumination? The constant, pervasive smoke, despite its undeniable discomfort, respiratory irritation, and potential long-term health implications for the inhabitants, acted as a surprisingly powerful natural preservative for the crucial timber roof structure. The compounds within the smoke actively deterred destructive wood-boring insects like deathwatch beetles and significantly slowed down the insidious process of rot and decay that would otherwise consume untreated wood. It also served as a remarkably rudimentary, yet often effective form of pest control, with the acrid fumes and smoky atmosphere actively discouraging mice, rats, and other vermin from making their homes within the dwelling, thus protecting precious stored foodstuffs from contamination and consumption. Furthermore, the smoke rising consistently through the porous layers of the thatch not only helped to dry it out, but also contributed to curing and preserving the roof material itself, silently extending the life and structural integrity of their precious, hard-won dwelling for decades. Given this unexpected dual function, would you trade modern comfort for the raw, unyielding endurance and unexpected benefits of medieval living? If you want to know the answer to this question, watch this video to the end. For the vast majority of medieval English peasants, the very concept of distinct, separate rooms within a home, a private bedroom offering solace, a dedicated kitchen for culinary endeavors, a quiet parlor for leisurely contemplation, was utterly alien, an unimaginable luxury beyond the wildest dreams of their daily existence. Their entire family, parents, children spanning multiple ages from infants to adolescents, sometimes even extended relatives like elderly grandparents seeking refuge, and astonishingly even valuable livestock, such as newborn calves, a small flock of chickens, or a prized pig during the bitter depths of winter, shared a single, incredibly cramped, multi-purpose space. This singular room was not just a dwelling. It was the raw, unvarnished crucible of their entire existence, a constant, shared experience from dawn till dusk and through the long, dark nights. Just truly pause and immerse yourself in this intimate reality. Your kitchen, where meager meals were cooked over an open, smoky fire. Your communal dining area, where everyone ate from shared wooden bowls. Your shared bedroom, where all bodies huddled together for warmth on straw mattresses, and often the animal shed. All contained within one perpetually smoky, dimly lit, unpartitioned room, where every sound, every breath, every movement was public, audible, and shared. Think about the sheer intimacy this entailed, the absolute lack of personal boundaries, the constant physical proximity. How despite such incredibly crowded, basic, and often pungent living conditions, did these medieval families manage to maintain any semblance of order amidst the chaos, or even the most fundamental level of sanitation in such an intimately shared, constant, and often animal-filled environment? It certainly wasn't achieved through modern notions of personal hygiene, elaborate cleaning rituals, or the architectural segregation we take for granted today. Instead, it was enforced through incredibly strict social norms, an inherent and deeply ingrained understanding of communal living, born of stark necessity and incredibly pragmatic, ceaseless measures like constantly sweeping, refreshing, and replacing the straw and rushes that covered the beaten earth floor. This stark, singular arrangement was a direct and powerful illustration of how the raw, overriding imperative of survival, particularly the critical need to share precious body warmth during brutal winters and protect valuable livestock from theft or the elements, trumped all other considerations like personal space, privacy, or even basic comfort as we understand it today. It was a life lived in constant, inescapable proximity, a profound testament to their adaptability. Given this absolute lack of personal space and constant intermingling with animals, could you survive a single day, let alone a lifetime, in a medieval peasant home without cracking under the pressure? If you want to know the answer to this question, watch this video to the end. Building a medieval peasant house was never a one-time effort, a project with a finite beginning and a definite celebratory end date signaling completion. From the precise moment the last piece of thatch was meticulously laid and the final daub smoothed onto the wattle, the humble structure began a brutal, continuous, and often unseen battle against decay, relentless humidity, the insidious creep of rot, and the ceaseless, unforgiving elements. With construction materials primarily drawn directly from nature, raw earth, unprocessed wood, and organic straw, constant, laborious maintenance and repair were not merely chores to be done on a leisure day. They were a fundamental, unavoidable, and demanding part of daily existence, a never-ending cycle of vigilance and backbreaking labor. This wasn't about aesthetics, it was about survival. Imagine the sheer, crushing physical burden of actively trying to preserve a home that seemed to be constantly trying to decompose around you, literally returning to the earth from which it came, with no access to modern hardware stores, no readily available manufactured building materials beyond what you could painstakingly forage, prepare yourself by hand, or trade for with immense effort, demanding relentless physical labor day after grueling day, year after year, for an entire lifetime. What truly happened to a peasant family if, despite their ceaseless efforts, they simply couldn't keep up with this endless, exhausting cycle of patching crumbling wattle and daub walls, meticulously retying loose thatch bundles after a storm, or if a catastrophic gale ripped their vital thatched roof apart beyond their immediate means to fix? The consequences were dire, immediate, and often catastrophic. Without immediate and robust communal support from their village, they faced the grim and terrifying reality of homelessness, often forced to abandon their small, hard-won plot of land and their meager possessions, becoming vagrants begging for scraps on the road, or desperately seeking reluctant shelter with distant, equally struggling relatives. A stark and chilling reminder of life's profound fragility and the razor's edge upon which their entire existence balanced. Their very roof was a constant battle, a silent struggle against time and nature. Considering the ceaseless toil required, was medieval home ownership a true blessing of stability or a relentless, soul-crushing curse of perpetual labor? If you want to know the answer to this question, watch this video to the end. While a peasant family technically owned their humble home and was ultimately responsible for its ongoing upkeep and the labor it demanded, the monumental act of constructing it from scratch was rarely, if ever, a solitary endeavor. The sheer scale of labor required, felling enormous trees with only crude hand tools, painstakingly hauling heavy timbers over miles of rough, often impassable terrain, preparing vast quantities of daub from clay pits, or raising a complex, multi-ton cruck frame into its upright final position, was simply too monumental, too physically demanding for a single family unit, no matter how strong or determined, to undertake alone. It was a task that demanded collective strength, synchronized effort, and shared expertise. Now truly consider this profound social dynamic. The entire village, sometimes even neighboring communities, would show up freely and willingly, offering their valuable back-breaking labor to build someone else's home, despite having their own field to tend, their own families to feed, and countless other duties demanding their precious time and rapidly dwindling energy. This wasn't merely a casual favor, it was a deeply ingrained cultural expectation. What then was the ultimate driving incentive for this immense, often unasked for, communal effort? It wasn't simply a matter of abstract generosity or pure kindness, as appealing as that thought might be to modern sensibilities. It was the deeply ingrained, unwritten law of survival, a fundamental, reciprocal contract rooted in absolute necessity and shared vulnerability. Their collective strength, their combined labor and shared skills, was the only reliable guarantee against utter destitution and collapse in a world entirely devoid of social safety nets, insurance policies, or readily available paid labor. Helping a neighbor was not just a good deed, it was a direct, indispensable, and vital investment in one's own future security, knowing implicitly that when disaster inevitably struck their own home, their own crops, or their own livelihood, the favor would be returned without question, ensuring the continuity and survival of the entire community, not just an individual family. Could this ancient way of life, built on mutual aid and collective responsibility, truly offer valuable lessons about the meaning of community and survival in our often isolated modern world? If you want to know the answer to this question, watch this video to the end. Beyond the single, all-encompassing main dwelling where the entire family ate, slept, sought shelter from the storm, and lived every moment of their waking and sleeping lives, a medieval peasant's homestead was a meticulously managed, intricate, and profoundly complex ecosystem of survival. It was not merely a collection of buildings, but a self-contained miniature economy, a carefully balanced system where every inch of cultivated land and every rudimentary structure served a vital, immediate, and utterly indispensable purpose in the family's relentless pursuit of existence. Typically nestled closely to the main house for ease of access and constant oversight, one would find small, roughly constructed barns or byres. These were absolutely essential for sheltering their most valuable livestock. Their precious cows not just providing milk, cheese, and occasional meat, but also crucial draft power for plowing, sturdy oxen, the very engines of their agricultural livelihood, or a small flock of sheep offering wool, milk, and sustenance. These indispensable outbuildings also served as secure, rudimentary spaces for safely storing precious harvested crops through the harsh, lean winter months, protecting the vital foodstuffs from pests, moisture, and theft, and for safeguarding irreplaceable tools, which were literally the fundamental means of their livelihood and their only capital. But perhaps most crucially for daily sustenance and for providing a vital, often life-saving, dietary supplement to their otherwise monotonous diet of basic grain, pottage, and legumes. The homestead universally included tiny, intensively cultivated garden plots known as crofts, situated immediately adjacent to the main house for effortless access and constant, diligent tending. Consider this stark, unyielding reality that defined their existence. After toiling relentlessly from the first gray light of dawn till the last flicker of dusk in the vast communal fields, literally sweating, aching, and straining every muscle to produce the village's main foodstuffs, how did a peasant family possibly find the additional, almost superhuman, time and sheer physical energy for this constant, demanding domestic labor? This involved meticulously maintaining every section of fence to protect their precious enclosures, repairing every sagging shed before it collapsed, and nurturing every single plant in their personal garden plot with painstaking care. The simple and brutal truth was that the concept of leisure time, as we understand it today, simply did not exist in their unforgiving world. Every waking moment was a calculated act of survival, a constant, physical investment in their immediate and near future. Every single one of these seemingly small peripheral tasks was directly and inextricably tied to immediate, pressing survival. Every carrot grown provided essential vitamins to ward off disease. Every medicinal herb nurtured could mean the difference between agonizing illness and a chance at recovery. Every tool sharpened ensured efficient, non-wasteful work. Every fence mended protected their precious animals from predators or straying, and every bit of animal waste collected from the buyer was vital, irreplaceable fertilizer for their fields, ensuring future harvests. It was a continuous, physically exhausting, yet remarkably ingenious and entirely self-sufficient form of localized economy, where absolutely nothing was wasted and every single effort directly contributed to feeding their family, providing rudimentary comfort, and painstakingly maintaining their meager, yet utterly vital existence. Their homes weren't just buildings. They were the absolute core of a relentless, personal, and utterly demanding fight for survival. In our era of instant gratification and outsourcing every need, could our modern, convenience-driven lives ever truly compare to their profound level of intricate self-reliance and the deep satisfaction born from total independence? If you want to know the answer to this question, watch this video to the end and prepare to be humbled. These humble English peasant houses, far from being quaint, romanticized fairy tale cottages plucked from a storybook, were in reality astonishing triumphs of human ingenuity, profound resilience, and remarkable adaptation to incredibly harsh realities and severely limited resources. Built entirely without modern concrete foundations, entirely without the inherent structural strength and stability of concrete, and completely without the aid of power tools or complex architectural blueprints drawn by university-trained engineers, many of these seemingly simple earthbound structures remarkably stood for decades, even centuries, often weathering countless brutal storms, bitter, prolonged winters, and the relentless, inexorable march of time. They were not monuments of grandeur or accumulated wealth, but rather enduring testaments to pragmatic necessity, deeply embedded communal knowledge, and incredible, often unrecognized skill. What does this incredible, enduring longevity truly tell us about the uneducated medieval builders? These nameless men and women who seemingly pulled these incredibly robust and durable dwellings from the very earth itself, relying purely on inherited intuition, ancestral tradition, and sheer muscle? It reveals that their knowledge was overwhelmingly practical, empirically derived from countless generations of acute observation, relentless trial and error, and an innate, almost spiritual connection to their natural environment and its readily available materials. They possessed an intuitive, hands-on understanding of how materials behaved, of complex structural forces, and of the nuances of their local climate in a way that many modern builders, entirely reliant on complex engineering calculations, advanced technology, and mass-produced components, might genuinely struggle to fully replicate with such incredibly rudimentary means. Their homes were not merely buildings, they were living embodiments of sustainable design, a profound testament to pragmatic construction, unparalleled resourcefulness, and sheer human will triumphing over theoretical ideals and daunting, omnipresent environmental challenges. They stand as silent teachers, embodying a forgotten, practical wisdom that speaks volumes about their ingenuity and harmonious relationship with their surroundings. In a world obsessed with technological advancement, rapid construction, and disposable products, could we perhaps learn something truly vital about sustainable building, enduring craftsmanship, and living in harmony with our environment from their primitive ways? If you want to know the answer to this question, watch this video to the end, because the answers might just surprise you and change how you view your own home. So, the next time you picture a medieval English peasant's home, ditch the fairy tale. Replace it with the raw, visceral reality of a single-room dwelling crafted from mud, sticks, and straw, permeated by wood smoke and constantly battling the elements. These weren't homes of luxury, but of relentless effort, profound resourcefulness, and astonishing resilience. They were the very definition of a roof over one's head, forged by bare hands and sheer, bloody will. If you found this unvarnished, gritty truth about medieval peasant life as utterly fascinating and eye-opening as we did, if it challenged your perceptions and ignited your curiosity about how life was truly lived in distant eras, then you absolutely won't want to miss our next deep dive into the hidden, often shocking, and always compelling histories of the past. There are so many more untold stories waiting to be unearthed, so many more forgotten, ingenious solutions to discover, and countless silent lessons from a world profoundly different from our own. Join our community of history enthusiasts. Make sure you hit that subscribe button right now and aggressively ring that notification bell so you don't miss out on another single episode, ensuring you're first to receive more shocking historical revelations that will utterly transform your understanding of how our ancestors truly lived.